As America struggles to cope with the coronavirus, we're all realizing how much we depend on each other for basic goods and services. We see empty shelves at the grocery store, we see a shortage of testing kits and face masks, and we wonder whether business is doing enough to help with the crisis. In times like these, there's a tendency to resent those that have more than we do, and to blame them for not doing their part in sharing the sacrifice. These feelings are totally understandable, but it's important not to let envy and fear undermine one of our most basic rights, the right to own property, and to do what we want with it. If we can't decide how to use our own time, money, and labor, then somebody else will decide for us. President Trump recently triggered the Defense Production Act
to compel General Motors to accept, perform, and prioritize federal contracts for ventilators.
The Defense Production Act forces businesses to prioritize government contracts and produce medical supplies during times of crisis. The act was originally signed into law in 1950 during the Korean War and essentially allows the government to dictate what private companies produce. It's hard to see why this power would ever be necessary. If medical supplies are in high demand, as they are now, companies will be happy to produce them. They'd be foolish not to. But that point aside, we should be very careful about giving control of production over to a central authority. No one person can possibly direct the activities of millions. We've seen what happens in socialist countries like Venezuela. When the government took control of agriculture, food production quickly dried up, and people starved. Our own history is full of examples of the federal government seizing control of private property during a crisis. The worst of these was the National Recovery Act.
I prescribed a remedy which is embodied in the National Industrial Recovery Act to lead us out of the wilderness of economic disaster into the bright sunlight of prosperity.
Enacted in 1933 to combat the Great Depression, the act dictated what companies could charge, when they could expand, how much they could pay their workers, and how many hours they could work. Some entrepreneurs were even jailed for lowering their prices. Because of these policies, small businesses were swallowed up by monopolies and cartels, and the Great Depression was extended for nearly a decade. In the same year, Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102, making it illegal for Americans to own gold. With the exception of a small amount of jewelry and a handful of coins, people were threatened with 10 years in prison if they didn't turn over their gold to the Federal Reserve. This was part of Roosevelt's attempt to blame the Great Depression on hoarding by the wealthy instead of his own bad economic policies. During World War II, the War Production Board, also created by Roosevelt, forced almost all private industry to produce military supplies. If you worked in America during the 40s, you had to support the war, whether you liked it or not. In 1970, President Nixon signed Executive Order 11615, imposing price controls on oil to keep the price of gasoline low for consumers. It's the same reaction we see to price gouging during natural disasters. The goal is to make necessary goods affordable for everyone, but the result is always the same: shortages. When producers can't raise their prices to meet demand, the goods simply disappear off the shelves. Anyone who lived during the 1970s will remember having to wait in line for hours just to buy gas. That is, when the pumps weren't entirely empty. President Trump's use of the Defense Production Act so far is small in comparison to these examples, but we always have to be careful. Giving up our property rights and allowing the government to dictate what we produce and how we produce it may seem like a good temporary solution to the crisis, but in reality, this strategy has always made things worse, not better. We solve problems by working together as a team, where everyone plays their part with their own special skills, knowledge, and instincts, not by blindly following orders from the federal government. It's going to take an immense amount of ingenuity to beat the coronavirus. But lucky for us, a million brains are always better than one.